Welcome to the Made2Homeschool Podcast. My name's Brandon, and my wife and I are the founders of Made2Homeschool. This is part 2 of our 2-part conversation with our new friend, Sam Sorbo. Sam's an education freedom advocate and the host of the Sam Sorbo Show. She's an award-winning actress and filmmaker, best-selling author, and host of School's Out with Sam Sorbo on Epic TV. She's home educated with 3 children for over a decade. Her books, They're Your Kids, Teach from Love, a school year devotional for families, Words for Warriors, and The Playbook for Home Learning, and her films are available at sorbostudios.com. Her newest book on education, The Parent's Guide to Homeschool, launches in late 2024. If you're new to our podcast, the important thing to know is that Made2Homeschool is a community and resource library first and foremost. You can find it at Made2Homeschool.com, where we offer monthly and annual plans for every budget and linked wherever you find these episodes. The purpose of this podcast so far has really been to share unique journeys of interesting people influencing the homeschool space online and, we hope, to bring encouragement and maybe some new wisdom to the folks listening. This conversation with Sam touched on a lot of topics, and I can't wait to hear from you about all you're taking away from it. Let's get into it. Okay, welcome back for part 2 of my conversation with Sam Sorbo. Sam, you dropped a number of grenades in part 1, and they exploded and shrapnel went everywhere, and it was super fun. One of those big ones was your feelings, and I think we share this point of view, by the way, on school. I think what your word was, school hates boys, what you said, yeah. I think. I would love if we can start this part of our conversation out with you expounding on that, why you believe that, what that looks like, and how we can help with that.
Yes. So I will start there, but before I get started, I want to broaden that for just a minute, and I want to come back to this so you can maybe make a note. Culture hates children. So we'll come back to that.
Okay.
School hates boys. Why? Because it forces boys to sit at a desk when they should be outside hitting things with sticks. Little boys have testosterone running them ragged, and to shackle them to a desk and make them sit quietly in a classroom. And then if they fail to do that, to poison them with drugs, illicit drugs that are outlawed. I don't think any culture has ever done this except maybe the Comprachicos, who were in the business of maiming children. So yes, school hates boys. It's very detrimental to boys. But we tend to have this conversation. We tend not to think of where we are on a vast timeline. That's a product, because we're products of our school system. We don't think of history as a long timeline, and we're just on this one part of it. So I want to take us back to the 1950s. And in the 50s, there was a video that went all through the schools. It was called Duck and Cover. And it was about a turtle who was walking along, and there was a rabbit maybe with a dynamite, a stick of dynamite. And so to save himself, the turtle, all he had to do was get down on the ground and pull his head into his shell, duck and cover. And it had a cute little song, and it was a little black and white video, and they featured a classroom of students who all dove under their desks and hid from a nuclear attack.
My mom watched this in school as a child. It terrified her.
Right. So way back when, this isn't new, this is old, okay? They terrified children on purpose, and they taught them to duck and cover. In other words, to cower in place when they were fearful. And they didn't just tell them to do that, they showed them how to do it. So the children embodied the lesson, okay, of a cowardice. That's anti-boy. That's decades old. Sure, it's anti-girl, but girls really are the ones who should be protected. But boys are the ones who are called to that greater calling of sacrifice for a greater good. That is and by the way, it's the Christ story, of course. Because, but I don't have to make this about religion. This is the way boys are engineered. They're engineered to heed a higher calling, to be the protectors, to be the patriarch, to be the lion, the great Leo, right? Who sits at the head of the table, and the women wander around and they wait on him. And I mean, that is sort of, there is some value in that. And when we deny a young man of that vision for his life, to be the master of his domain, so to speak. And by the way, women want men who are strong and who are good protectors and good, providers, let's say. And I mean, we can get into this idea that, women give birth and men can't touch that. And so because they can't touch that, they need this other thing, but we're denying it of them. You don't hold the door open for me. Shame on you. What do you think? I'm helpless? I can do everything and even better than you can. That's the feminist mantra, right? It's so destructive to the young men. And now the culture's saying to young men, do all the porn you want. Yeah. You don't have to put a ring on it. You don't have to pay for it. Like, just you go and have as much fun as you want. And by the way, your life has absolutely no purpose. And so that's the message. And that's the message in our schools.
And more than that, you're evil because of your desire to be aggressive, because of your desire to lead, because you want to be strong, and because you think strength is important. You're just bad and toxic masculinity. And it's so funny how quickly it happened, because as a young boy, my grandma, if she saw me not hold a door open for a lady at 5 years old, I'd have to go pick a switch. Like, it was a big deal. And then by the time I got into high school, college, adulthood, I was getting into full-time ministry, there were a lot of girls who'd be like, "Oh, don't hold my door. I can pay for all this stuff." My wife never did that, by the way. She expected
those were not the girls, right?
Those were, thank God.
Thank you for that. That's a good litmus test. My son is seeing somebody, and he will slam her door shut on her. How dare you open your own door? Like, he's like, I get the door, you don't get the door. Yeah. Like, and you know what? It took her a minute, but I think she's really appreciating it. So it's we should be hearkening back to more traditional times. There's a reason that we had those traditions, right? Yeah. Because women were protected. Now they're no longer protected. And look what's happened. They're getting raped in their own bathrooms by men pretending to be women. Like, it's so gone off the rails.
And I should say,
yeah, go ahead.
You know, Sam, I think that as you're saying this, and I don't want to cut you off, but I do think I want to cut something out right away as somebody's listening to this and saying, "Oh, well, this is just misogynistic garbage." None of that, because I'm talking to, I would say, a successful, entrepreneurial, intelligent woman who speaks her mind. So, like, I think you would say, well, there's nothing misogynistic about what you're saying right now about the role of men and women.
Gosh, no, but we have to understand that there's a difference between the sexes.
Yes. Yeah.
And to deny that is absurd. I am not getting up in the middle of the night when something goes bump. I am not. My husband gets up and he grabs a gun. Yeah. And I stay and I wait, and I might go hide somewhere. Yeah. Because my role is not to get up in the middle of the night, but his role is. And because that's his role, he gets to sit at the head of the table, and I bring him his meal if that's what we're doing, right? He doesn't often want me to bring him his meal, but by the way, that gives me so much joy. And we ought to find the joy in serving others. We ought to know that joy, because it gives our life meaning. But we've eschewed all of that, and we've said, no, my life is all about me. And we're the most unhappy that we've been in decades, right? We're the most antidepressants. The drug companies are making off like bandits with all of this feminist garbage. So I'm just saying, schools hate boys because the schools will not promote anything that a boy really ought to focus on. Then if we want to broaden this conversation, the school's stated goal is college prep and career readiness.
Right. They're factory makers. Yeah.
And they are factory schools, but I'm going a different direction with this. If college prep and career readiness is the goal of the school, and typically it's of every single school. So any school that you go to, if you ask them, like, what makes them so great? oftentimes the answer will at least include in part, and our graduates go on to XYZ colleges. So we ought to look at that if that's their stated goal. Now, mind you, they're not getting that goal done. But if that's their stated goal, what is that goal? Because that's the goal that we are telling our children they should strive for. Otherwise, why go to school? The school tells them they're going to school for college prep and career readiness. So career readiness is, college prep is learning that you have to spend a lot of money on college, right? Because and you want to go to a better school, it's costing more money. So get the scholarship so that you can afford the best school possible or whatever.
I was told that. It was shoved down my throat all through high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then career readiness is really to get the best career possible. Well, define best. What is the best career? The one that makes the most money, obviously, which means your value is in the amount of money that you make. And only that. Everything else goes to the wayside. Sex, have as much sex as you want. Morals? No, thank you. Bullying is the moral code in school. Survival of the fittest. Spirituality? Oh, please. That's for the ancients. Nobody believes in that stuff anymore. Your purpose for being is to earn a paycheck. Don't you understand that? That's what you've been taught to do. That's what I was taught to do. And it turned out I actually was very successful early on. And so I sort of looked around and I went, wow, I guess I did it. Like, stick a fork in me, I'm done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then I was like, so this is all there is to life? I might as well just off myself. I mean, I won the jackpot. I did what they said I should do, right? And so then I went on a search and then I discovered spirituality. I was lucky because I was hit with that early on. Imagine if you go all through your life, you toil away, you're just going for the better paycheck, nicer car, bigger house, whatever. And you're just work. And then you get to 60 years old and you're kind of looking at the downslope and you're going, I'm not going to earn the money anymore because I'm on the way down. Right. And I'm not happy. Why am I not happy? It's because you have no spirituality in your life, because your life has no meaning, because money, what does the Bible say? Wealth is deceit.
Yeah, I mean, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And it's so funny you're tying these things together, Sam. And I think that, in full-time ministry for years, I would see, especially middle-aged couples, and very rarely, folks in poverty, very rarely that. Actually, you would expect it. Middle-aged, upper middle-class couples have accomplished everything they were told for their whole lives is their goal. I have got a great job. I have a boat in my yard. Both of us worked, and one of them at least is on antidepressants all the time for something or the other, and now they are on the verge of collapse. Their kids have grown up. They are empty nesters, and they have no purpose despite achieving all their goals. And I think a lot of this in the COVID season, right? A lot of people woke up to the reality that many folks, not a broad brush here, but most perhaps, are living for a thing we were programmed to believe was our ultimate good, that achieved a good for somebody else. And so when you're talking about this, it makes me wonder, I want to ask you, Sam, what are you telling your kids is their ultimate life goal? But I want to ask you that, but we're going to have to go to a quick break and come right back.
When it comes to standardized testing, students need a better option, and that's what we've created. At CLT, our mission is to reconnect knowledge and virtue by providing meaningful assessments and connections to seekers of truth, goodness, and beauty. CLT's assessments for grades 3 to 12 provide valuable feedback for our students and educators while offering a better testing experience. Our exams can be taken in school or at home. They assess timeless skills like logic and critical thinking. They feature meaningful reading content drawn from the greatest works in the Western tradition. Students who perform well on CLT exams have earned a reputation for being some of the best students at the collegiate level. We have hundreds of partner colleges who actively recruit our students and offer millions of scholarship dollars to CLT test takers. CLT is truly the new standard for assessments. Visit us at cltexam.com.
before the break, Sam, I was getting ready to ask you a really heavy question. I'm going to ask it to you. You might go somewhere else, but I'm going to ask you anyway. We're talking about what the goal is in life, right? For our kids, what do we teach them? Because the school system taught them work, career pathway, that's your goal for boys, girls, everybody. How do you manage that in your home with your kids?
Yeah, so it's hard because the culture tells us one thing, but the Bible tells us something else.
Yeah.
The one thing that I say to Christians, the Bible never says find a good school for your child. Never says that. It says teach your children my words, teach them diligently, teach them when you walk by the by, when you lie down to sleep, when you rise up in the morning. You're supposed to teach your kids, and specifically the Bible or the law, which is the Bible, right? Because the best way to teach somebody something is tell them a story. And the Bible is the story of the law.
Yeah.
And
sure.
So one thing that I did that I accidentally did really, really well, it's the one thing that gave me success, I will say, as a homeschool parent, was I sat down and read the Bible with my kids every day. I didn't do it right away. I did Bible study that had a homeschool component that was kind of fun for a couple years, where the kids and I would do our Bible study together, then we'd go to Bible study separately, and then we'd do our Bible study together again the next week. And so we were doing the same study, so we could talk about it and we could actually do it together. Their questions were a little different than mine, but we would do it together. But then we ran out of time. I didn't have time for the big Bible study meeting once a week. And so I said to them, you know what, we're just going to read the Bible every morning. And I was lucky because I had somebody pour into me at that point in my life to say, people should read their Bibles every day. And I just took that to heart. I'm like, let me pick that up, because I really needed to hear that right now. And that's what we're going to do. And what happened was my kids realized that the Bible's the cheat sheet. It's the Cliff Notes for life. It's the truth. And if you give your kids the truth, they don't want any counterfeit. So if you give them the truth, they will run away from transgender because that's just weird. They'll run away from other sort of pernicious belief systems because they're weird and they're wrong. And the kids understand, this is right. And therefore they're then capable of saying, that's wrong. One other thing that I did with my kids is I basically impeached everything. What did you think of the sermon? Did you think he was right when he said this? What did you think of that other thing? And then, I talked to so-and-so after the sermon and they said this. What do you think of that? Right. So we would impeach. We went to the movies. What did you think of the movie? And by the way, movies are great because it gives you lots of opportunity. First of all, in theory, they're entertaining. I stopped being entertained by movies, but my kids still enjoyed them. But it gives the opportunity to go through and go, but this was a big hole. And then that starts a whole discussion. And so my children now are incredibly, so they're 22, 20, and 18, and they are incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for? Insightful, not easily deceived. They cut right to the chaff. So your question was really like, what's their life goal if it isn't college prep and career readiness? Now, I held open the idea of college, but I became quite disillusioned. There are very few colleges in the United States now that I would give any merit whatsoever. Braden came to me when he was 16 or 15, and he said he knew where he wanted to go to college. And I said, that's great. What do you want to do? What do you want to study? And he said, well, I want to be an actor. And I laughed. And I said, darling, you don't need a college degree to be an actor. And he goes, you don't? Why do they teach acting? And I said, because they can earn money teaching acting. And he's like, well, something's wrong with that. So then he eventually decided not to go to college. I don't think it would have served him. He didn't like studying. My second child, who was more studious, had wanted to go to college, maybe. I think that he decided, he visited colleges with friends, and he decided that those people really just don't know what's going on. There's a lot of counterfeit Christians, even in the small Christian colleges. I mean, I knew a young woman who went to a Christian college. she eventually realized that this one professor that she really liked was an atheist. And so one day at lunch, she asked her, "Are you an atheist?" And the professor said, "Yes." And she said, "But then why are you teaching here?" And the professor said, "Oh, this is my mission field." And so we have to be smarter, right? This system, look, the higher education used to be all religious, and now it's almost none religious, right? Even the religious ones are barely religious because they're hiring atheist college professors. Like, what do you want out of that?
In my partying days in your county, a lot of the folks that I was getting, a little crazy on the weekends with were students at a local Christian university I'm sure you're familiar with. So,
yeah. And so, in fact, I visited a college with my daughter that's sort of off the charts a little bit, off the beaten path. But even those students who are ostensibly like super Christian, not so much. And so we were kind of disappointed she's not going to do that. We thought that might be like really cool, but no. I had to really wrestle with not willing my children to go make a ton of money, because that's the metric that I grew up with. That's the metric of success, is you have to earn a ton of money. And I had a stern talking to myself based on the Bible. And I decided that I was going to be more loyal to God's word than the word of man. And so I literally had to say, you know what? If they turn out to work at Wendy's, I'm going to be okay with that. They will get it figured out somehow. It turns out that my oldest is very successful. He does social media for people, and it's the greatest use of his talents. He's also an actor, and he's being successful that way. Has he, totally won the jackpot yet? No, not quite, but he's getting there. You know what? They'll end up on their feet. Now, I understand that I'm speaking from a position of luxury. We make the nice living. We're fine.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And a lot of our friends, not so much. They're scraping to get by and stuff like that. So I understand that I had the luxury of permitting myself to say my kids will do what they want to do. But that's not to say that I've told them, hey, you don't have to do anything because we'll support you for the rest. Like, that's not happening. And they know that. So I'm cautiously optimistic, I guess. And my daughter wants to, when people say, what do you want to do? She says, I want to be a mom. And it's funny because I just heard Tucker Carlson talk about this. He told a story about going to a convenience store completely off the beaten path, this rundown, ramshackle place, one lone woman in there working day after Christmas. And he's thinking, oh, this poor soul. And so, she said, Merry Christmas. He said, Merry Christmas. How was your Christmas? And she said, well, I worked here in the morning. And he's going, oh, this poor woman. She said, but then I went home and my kids came over for Christmas dinner and I cooked. Of course, Leon wasn't there because he was in prison, but he should be getting out pretty soon. And he's just going, my gosh, this gal, the poor thing, and he has 4 kids and he's very well to do. Like, he's, killing it right now and has been for a long time. He's Tucker Carlson, for crying out loud. And he said, how many kids do you have? And she said, oh, I've got 7. And he's like, oh my gosh, she's got 7 kids. How does she even breathe? You know what I mean? And she looks at him and she goes, I know, I'm blessed. Embarrassed at how blessed she was. And it completely twisted him. And he went, she's right. Wealth is deceit. The real wealth is your kids, your family, your progeny. I mean, and we've just been abused by our schools. We've been disabused of the truth by our schools. And that's why I say our schools hate children. I mean, our culture hates children. We deprive them of childhood, for crying out loud. The most wonderful time of life, right? No, you may not. You have to sit in an institution every day. And even homeschoolers, by the way, even homeschoolers do this, right? No, you have to do all your work. You better do this, that, and the other thing. And if you struggle with it, then it must be good. You know, if you're like, really, I can't do it, then we've got to do twice as much. And stop it. By the time your child is, you know, whatever, he'll be able to add. You know what I mean? Like,
Sam, it's funny. My wife and I, Brigitte and I, have been talking a lot lately about family dynamics and people we know and what we see in the world, especially, you know, she works in the medical field. And some of the stuff she sees and some of what people chase. Doctors chasing the check. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not a wealth is evil guy at all. In fact, I'm more on the Dave Ramsey side of if you have wealth, that's great. You can be a blessing to so many people. So you should seek that in some ways. But I've done, I don't know, 30 to 50-ish. I've done a bunch of funerals, okay? And all those funerals, sitting with all those families who had lost one of the people they love most in this world. In not one of those funerals did anybody ever mention, especially thinking about the conversations we have preparing for the service, never mentioned the wealth of the family, never said, I'm so glad my dad worked all the time. I'm so glad I never saw my mom because she climbed a ladder. I'm so glad a corporate America owned my family. I never heard that. And I think that I love this conversation because obviously we're in total agreement. But like, one, what happens to you on the day you pass from here? 1, 2, when you're about to do so on your deathbed, who will be with you, who loves you? And I think that if we look in light of eternity, right, and in light of the things that will matter on the day we lay on our deathbed, I think we can let go a lot of this stuff that we have as a culture built around us. And I think there's a bunch of things, Sam, if we can have another conversation sometime soon, I would love it, because I would love to talk more about you saying the culture hates children. I would love to talk more about your thoughts on the university system, because that's another big subject for me. But can I ask you just a couple rapid fire things before we go?
Sure.
Okay, 1, what was your biggest hurdle as a homeschool mom?
Oh, probably my own insecurity.
Ooh, okay.
Just not thinking that I could get it done. That's what I try to take off the table for people. I try to tell them your insecurity, your inability is your greatest strength, because if you don't know something, you will be forced to show your child how to find out.
That's good.
And that's the most empowering thing you can do for a child, is teach them where to find answers. You shouldn't be all the answers.
I don't know as a fine answer.
There's a video that's just going viral about a girl who's at the protests right now, and she's protesting. She doesn't know what.
I saw that.
So she turns to her friend and she goes, what are we protesting? And the friend says, I don't know. I wish I was better educated. And what she's saying with that is not, I'm stupid, because she attends Columbia University, which is an Ivy League school. Like, she's saying she wishes someone had told her things, because she's too stupid to know how to find out stuff. She's smart enough to know that she's an ignorant, but she's not smart enough to understand what to do to remedy that. And that is ultimately the fulfillment of the school system. That is their goal, and they've achieved it. Their goal is to shut down thought. And she's a perfect example of that.
And you want to encourage people to get past that insecurity, to know that they can think for themselves, that they are capable.
I don't want them to get past it. I want them to embrace it and say, yes, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to get started anyway.
I love that.
And I'm going to let my child show me what he needs to learn. You're not stupid. And especially if you're starting with your kids young, here's the secret that a lot of people don't understand. The education of children is more about relationship than it is about academics. If you don't focus on the academics, your kids will turn out just fine. Who here uses the Pythagorean theorem? Who here remembers the Pythagorean theorem? But who remembers their relationship with their grandma? And relationships are character building. And it's more important to build the character of your child than it is for your child to be a genius. Einstein. But if you build the character of your child, he's got a good shot at being an Einstein. Benjamin Franklin was an Einstein. He was homegrown. He was self-taught. He's the only individual to sign all 4 of the founding documents of the United States of America, a new nation that has given the world gifts more than any other nation in history. And he was entirely self-taught. He was a rock star of his day. He was the most popular man in the world back in the time when they didn't have the internet. Everybody knew who he was. He captured lightning in a bottle. And he was self-taught.
Sam, what was your biggest blessing of becoming a homeschool mom?
The relationship that I have with my kids. So when they were teenagers, they would come into my bedroom when Kevin was away, just singularly. They would come in and sit down on the end of my bed and just download their day to me. And I'd be sitting there like with my computer trying to get my work done, because at a certain point for 4 years, I did a daily radio show for 3 hours every day. And so I would have to prep it constantly. I was constantly prepping. And they would come into my bedroom and I'd fold up my laptop and I'd put it to the side and I'd have a conversation with them, because that was more precious. And I'd be like, okay, mental note, it's going to be a late night, And that's what I try to impress upon people, is your relationship with your children is more important than anything else. It's more important than any grade, any test score, any understanding of advanced calculus. It's more important than all that stuff.
I was just about to ask you, Sam, if you had one piece of advice you would give to a family that's out there hearing this today and thinking, I don't know if I can do it. I was going to say, what would your advice be to them? Was the last thing you said your answer, or would you have something else to say?
Yeah, take your kids out of school tomorrow. Never put your kids back in school. Just make that commitment to never put your children, never put your authority under someone else's. By the way, I think that might be the biggest war on boys in the schools, is the fact that the school supplants the father's authority in the home. And so the children never experience the father's authority. And in my view, when kids grow up in the house, which is the way that God designed it, right? With dad and mom are the representations of God to the child. And as the child goes, he gains a respect and an admiration for his dad or his mom. And eventually he transfers that to the Lord. So when you cast a shadow there, you come between the parents and the child, or rather you come between the parents and God, which is so the school comes in, we're the authority, you parents shut up. Now more than ever, you parents shut up, right? And then like the school sends home a permission slip. Mommy, you have to sign this. Teacher said, here, you have to sign the permission slip. She said, you have to sign it. And you say, oh, okay, I'll just sign it. And here we go. You lost all your authority. Now teacher's the arbiter of truth. Don't do that. Don't do that to your kids. Your kids want to think of you as their hero. Don't disabuse them of that notion. They'll have plenty of time to figure it out later.
Sam Sorbo.
But yeah, give them that opportunity. Sorry.
No, Sam. No, I don't ever want to stop you because it's really good, but I do want to cut for time. But Sam, where can people find you if they want to hear you on a regular basis?
Yeah, samsorbo.com and patriot.tv every day at 4 p.m. Eastern. I do a TV show, patriot.tv.
Sam, thank you so much for your time today. It's been awesome.
Thanks for having me.